Welcome to the Life After Sugar podcast, the podcast that's not just about sugar, but about your relationship with it and also with food and especially with yourself. So if you want to discover your life after sugar and hear inspiring stories from all kinds of people who also cut out sugar in their way, at their pace, for their own reasons, this is the podcast for you. Because when you take away the sugar, you can finally discover the real sweetness in your life. I'm your host, Netta Gorman. And my guest today is Cassandra, a mindful eating coach and author of the book, The Mindful Table. Cassandra grew up on a classic American diet, and it wasn't until her 20s that she started connecting the dots between what she was eating and how she was feeling. In this episode, Cassandra talks about mindful eating and how being more mindful and present when you're eating is even possible when you're busy living real life. We'll get to my chat with Cassandra in just a minute. But first, I just wanted to tell you that if you're looking for some free resources, then I have plenty for you. First, download my 5 tips to get rid of cravings. And those 5 tips may not be what you think they are. So go to sugarcravingsfree.com and download your 5 tips today. And while you're at sugarcravingsfree.com, why not take the Cravings Quiz? I created this Cravings Quiz specifically to help you start thinking more deeply about what triggers your cravings. And when you do this quiz, you'll get your personalized score as well as my practical tips to help you take your first step to get rid of cravings. Those free resources are at sugarcravingsfree.com. And on social media, come check out the Life After Sugar Facebook page and subscribe to the Life After Sugar YouTube channel, as well as my Instagram account at My Life After Sugar, which is where you'll get all kinds of inspiration so that you can see that it's perfectly possible to live a happy and active life, even if you don't eat sugar. All right, so here's my chat with Cassandra. Today I'm with Cassandra, and Cassandra, can you tell us where you grew up and what you used to eat when you were a child?
Sure. I grew up in North New Jersey. So this area of Bergen County that's like 20 minutes outside of New York City. And I like to say that I grew up with very standard American diet. Both of my parents are from New York, like Bronx, Brooklyn. And it's actually one of the funny stories that I share was that I remember so keenly in first grade, we had this like international exercise where everybody was supposed to bring in some food element from their background and their culture. And it was a nice way for us to have a fun activity to share. And I remember going home and telling my parents about it and being like, okay, Mom, can you make their baked ziti or she would make like stuffed shells with like ricotta and tomato sauce. And my mom starts laughing and she was like, we're not Italian. You can't bring that. And I was like, but Mom, that's what we eat. Like we ate so much like spaghetti meatballs, lasagna, like very more like I call it like Brooklyn Italian food, not necessarily like Italy Italian food.
Right.
And then I'd say there were a lot of like, you're very like, again, like typical American dinners with like chicken and mashed potatoes and green beans, meatloaf, tomato soup, grilled cheese. Like, it was very, I feel like when you think of the stereotype that we have here in America, that was exactly what I ate growing up.
All right. And I'm curious to know what you ended up taking to that dinner.
Oh, so what we actually did, we ended up doing kielbasa,
Okay.
which is like a sausage thing. And my parents are My mom is like Polish and Irish, and my dad is Austrian, German, and Danish.
Wow.
And so I think it was from the German contingency there.
Yeah.
But we also did, my grandma also made for another thing like potato pancakes. So it's like the kids were bringing in latkes,
Yeah.
and I loved latkes. And I went home and my grandma was like, well, we would make potato pancakes because, her family was super Irish. And yeah, it was just so interesting how I mean, I think they just kind of molded to what was around them.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Wow. And so you grew up as a so-called typical American diet on that. Did you have fast food or was that off the table?
Oh, yeah, no, I was allowed to have fast food. Um, I mean, it was more of like a special treat. It wasn't like a like everyday thing, but it was by no means like a quote unquote like no. Like we would have, I would say at least one night a week. There was like one night a week where I would get to stay up an hour later to watch a TV show. And my parents would order pizza, and that was kind of like our fun night. And then I remember just kind of intermittently, when we were like in the car or, rushing between appointments and stuff, like it was totally not a big deal to like stop at McDonald's or Wendy's or any of the fast food. So yeah, I ate it all.
Cool. Okay. So, and then when did you move from the New York area to out west?
That was 2016.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah, so I did it by myself. I'd already lived in New York City after college for a bit and decided I'd always wanted to try living in California.
Okay. All right. Was the food different there? Did you notice if the food was different?
It's funny. I think I expected it to be healthier, but I don't really feel like that was my experience.
Okay.
Because I was living, at that point for probably like 5 or 6 years in like East Village, like part of Manhattan, where like fast food wasn't as much of a thing because why would you have fast food when you could like get the best falafel, down the street? Or like there was so much like kind of like fast food that was
Yeah.
more like, ethnic in the city and so good. And so that was like my thing. And then I remember, you're also walking all the time in New York City. And
Mm.
then I remember I moved to Santa Monica and, feeling like California was, I was shocked by the amount of fast food I saw everywhere here.
Oh,
People also spent so much time in their car, which like was not a thing for me too. And then, but then you also had the opposite of it. So like there was also, a lot of like organic juice culture here, and there were like more vegan restaurants. And so it was like a mixed bag. I feel like if you could whatever you wanted, you could find it, but like the culture itself wasn't like pushing you in either direction.
gotcha. Okay. And so you and I were talking about mindful eating. And can you explain to the listeners what that even means?
Mindful eating, I think, is just bringing awareness to what you're putting in your body. Bringing awareness to not what you're putting in, but how you're putting it in, and the energy and intention with which you're fueling yourself and making those choices.
All right. Which for some of us, and especially in North America, is like the opposite of how we actually eat, which is mostly mindless, automatic, as fast as you can, get it out the way so you can get on with real life.
Yeah, it is where we have such a culture. We were talking briefly before we started recording about our mutual French love. And me and my husband, we go to the south of France at least once a year to celebrate our wedding anniversary. And one of the things that we always talk about when we're there is that you can go to any cafe and get like an espresso and just sit there, you know? And I remember the first time I did that in France, and I was like looking over my shoulder because, like, if you do that in New York or California, the waitress is like, "Okay, you're gonna order. Okay, you're gonna order. Like,
Uh-huh.
stop sitting at my table." And there's just, it just really like highlighted it for me. We have such a culture here of like, I'm gonna just get the coffee to go. I'm just gonna get the sandwich to go. I'm not, I'm gonna eat in my car, right? I'm just like, and eating is like a thing I'm gonna do from X point to Y point instead of like sitting and enjoying it. And then it's really interesting because we tend in those moments to eat these really either like salty or sugary or, kind of like indulgent foods.
Mm.
And yet we're not even enjoying them.
Yeah.
Right? It's like
Yeah.
if you're gonna just shove something in your mouth for fuel, like throw a banana until you get to, your the end of your drive or
Yeah. Oh,
something, right?
totally. Yeah.
It's crazy. It's definitely the culture and um, I think also, a little bit of a misprioritization that we have societally.
Yeah, and I find that it's more like that in North America and some parts of Western Europe, whereas, as you were saying, like in France or south of France, Italy, I spent some time there last summer. It's like food is a priority, whereas up here in North America, at least, it feels like, and I can't generalize, but it feels like food is something that's getting in the way of doing other stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. All the other things that you need to get done today, and we have to rush and we don't have time. And I think in general, as a collective, when we have those moments where we like actually stop and sit and eat with our family or we enjoy a meal to ourselves, it's more of like an occasion where I feel like that's more of like the daily norm.
Yeah.
Maybe that doesn't happen, for all 3 meals a day for, even in Europe, right? But at least having one meal a day where everybody gathers around the table and that's what the priority is. And I also just think because of that need for speed, so to speak, or the need for like just get it done, get it over with, um, that is also why we don't have the same reverence for like ingredients and farm to table that I think you find a little bit more effortlessly, especially in less like urban parts of Europe.
Hmm.
There's more of that. Like I also remember being in Italy and eating so many things that I can't really eat anymore in America because they bother me in different ways and I'm sensitive to them. And then all of a sudden being able to eat them there and, inquiring, about, why do you think this is? And the chef or hosts or whatnot were like, probably because we source all of our ingredients from the neighborhood, right?
Yeah.
Whereas like a lot of our ingredients are coming from God knows where on a truck, and before we get it and so processed. So yeah, it is we've drifted so far away from it. And then, the price that a lot of us are paying, or at least the people in my line of work and world are paying, is that we have these unhealthy relationships with our body that also connect to an unhealthy relationship with food. And then we, find ourselves frustrated because our body's not feeling its best. It's maybe holding on to weight or bloat or has some skin issues or, digestive problems, right? And we feel, stumped as to why.
Mm.
Um, and so much of it is because it's just not how we were raised as a society here.
Hmm. Yeah. And how can, like, it feels like this is a cultural thing as much as a food thing. And how can we live in a culture of fast food, literally, it's got to go fast, and slow down and make our eating more mindful? How can we do that in practical terms?
Yeah, so I think it is. It's like a one person revolution in a way. But there's also like I'm a business owner. I I'm busy. I just, I have a toddler now who keeps me on my toes.
Hmm.
A husband who's also like, another person to take care of.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, I very much live in the real world here. And I think it's about finding those intentional food choices that also align with your very real life. So, an example of this that when I work with clients, breakfast for a lot of us is, a little bit more of a rushed meal. If you have kids, maybe you're getting them ready. If you're, walking the dog or, getting everything ready to leave the house for work or whatever it might be, it can be this kind of rush thing. So a few things we can do there is ahead of time, really intentionally tuning in to what would be a nourishing breakfast for me. And in my book, The Mindful Table, I encourage you to be more of a food detective. So,
Mm.
like, play around with a couple of things. So, maybe you're, for instance, I'll have a client that's like, well, I'm just stopping at Starbucks and I just get the breakfast sandwich or the croissant because it's like, what do I grab right on my way to work with my coffee?
Yeah.
And so, in that moment, it's like, okay, so what if you take literally 5 max 10 minutes in the morning and put some Ezekiel bread in the toaster with avocado, right? Or a little olive oil drizzle, whatever their thing is, right?
Right.
It's about finding something that isn't like you got to stop and make yourself this like elaborate meal in the morning.
Hmm.
It could be something as simple as I'm a big fan for this, especially when you have those moments where you're like you don't have a lot of time. Well, let's like take out the cooking time so that you can enjoy the eating time. So
Ah.
if that means like, for me, one of my like busy morning breakfasts is I'll just have some coconut yogurt, berries, and some granola that I've made, or sometimes just skip the granola if I don't have granola. Throw some almonds in there, and that's something that takes me 2 seconds to throw together, so that I can take even just the 5 minutes
Mm.
to sit and enjoy it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so it's having those kinds of rules, and I always recommend with people just start it one meal at a time. Don't try to like reinvent your whole life at once because what happens is then it starts feeling overwhelming. Whereas if we can just do, okay, this week I'm just going to play around with breakfast. And I came up with 3 easy things that are not going to take me more than 5 minutes to make that feel, healthy, that align with my values and, what I believe nutritionally. And I'm going to experiment to see at the end of the week, if I'm rotating them, let's say,
Hmm.
which one did I feel the best after for the first half of my day? Which one did I feel like was, enjoyable, was not too time consuming? And then that can become more and is kind of like an oxymoron because we're like, okay, mindfully eating and you don't want to be an autopilot, but you can also mindfully eat with systems that support you.
Mm.
Right? So I think having a couple of things that in the back of your head, I almost always have this in the house,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Then you have something that that you can make an aligned, healthy choice that's not going to take you that much time. And then the priority can be, I'm actually going to sit down and eat it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And that's huge because I mean, it seems crazy, but so many people don't even sit down.
Yeah. Or if they do, they're in the car or something.
Yeah. And I think that's also like having some hard, fast rules for yourself,
Mm.
right? I'm not going to eat in the car.
Mm.
Or have certain, like, I know certain people have like different commutes or whatnot, blood sugar things. Have like, if you're going to have something in the car, have maybe a small bag of nuts or like a piece of fruit that can be like an emergency stash, right? If you're like stuck in some crazy traffic or whatever, and you're like, okay, I feel myself like impulsively wanting to grab something that's going to be way worse if I pull over. Let me just grab this to get me home. But for your meals, sit down. And even if it's, like I said, ideally 20 minutes, it takes us 20 minutes for our digestive system to even understand that we are full.
Yeah.
And so if we have 20 minutes, which I don't think is a lot of time to ask, um, you know, honoring ourselves with 20 minutes. But even if it's 10, honestly, if you're eating a piece of avocado toast and you eat it, you don't really even need 10 minutes to eat it if you're just letting that be your main focus. Oh my God, it's going to feel so much better. It's going to feel like you had a little holiday, if you're someone that's usually just buzzing around and, grabbing something.
Totally. I want to take a quick break to say that if this is your first time here, then welcome and thank you for listening to this podcast. And whether you're new or a regular and you haven't yet rated or reviewed this podcast, could I ask you to scroll down and tap on the stars to rate this podcast and also to write a short review to let me know how this podcast is helping you in your life after sugar. I love reading your reviews. And when you rate and review this podcast, not only does it encourage me to continue making new episodes, but it also helps to share this podcast and have more people see it so that we can help more people feel better and lose weight with less sugar. So again, thank you for rating and reviewing this podcast and for spreading the word about sugar. Well, I tell the people that I help that it doesn't take any more time to boil up a dozen eggs as it does two. So, that's what I do. I always have hard-boiled eggs in the fridge. And then if I'm in a rush, which actually I'm not, I don't eat breakfast, so I'm never in a rush in the morning. But, they're there. I don't necessarily eat them in the morning, but when I am ready to eat, they're there.
Oh, see, I think it's so important having, giving yourself that gift of having some staple foods around. For me, I like love apples.
Mm.
So, I will always have apples around because if I need like a bridge snack, I'll cut up an apple. Things like having like for me, like gluten-free oats. I think it's just maybe, growing up in the Northeast, I'm like a warm breakfast kind of girl. I don't really love a cold breakfast. But it's like I always have that there. And even if I'm having a busy day, there's always at least there are some things that I can just always grab. And then like you were saying, I think the next step then and the gift to yourself is doing prepping some of that stuff. I especially think now so many of us work at home post COVID and
Sure.
remote jobs and it's so easy, at least I'll just say for myself, if I'm in like a good workflow and I'm like inspired and I'm like boom, 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 that it's hard for me to sometimes slow that momentum and want to like full on cook something. So I love to be able to make, one night when I'm making us something for dinner, I'll make a whole pot of soup. Last week I made like this like artichoke lemon potato soup, right?
Wow.
And then I just have a pot of that,
Yeah.
right? So I can just scoop it and like heat it up and if I want to have like, a piece of sourdough bread or I want to like throw an avocado on top of it, it's just like easy thing, same thing. I love just making a big thing of quinoa. And then, if I'm chopping vegetables again for like something else I'm making for dinner, like roasting them for dinner, I just chop everything. And
Mm.
then everything I don't need for that was thrown with the quinoa. And that's something I can easily just scoop and throw over some greens, drizzle olive oil or whatever, and it's good to go. And I think those are really self-loving gestures.
Mm.
Those are setting ourselves up for success, especially I think always because you feel so, it's almost like mothering yourself in a way, right? It's
Yeah.
like, the idea of like the mother that always has like something, some snack in her bag or whatever for you. It's like you're giving yourself that gift and saying, hey, I know during the week you're going to be crazy, or I know Monday's always like a really long day for you. And when you come home, you're really not going to want to make dinner. So I'm going to make sure on Sunday night I make something that has two servings so that you can eat it on Monday and give
Yeah.
yourself that gift.
Yeah, yeah. And you know, as a mother, that we mothers very often put ourselves right at the bottom of our list of priorities. We'll look after everybody else. And the slightest hint of taking care of ourselves makes us feel selfish.
Oh yeah. Oh
Hmm.
yeah. Constant guilt. But I think what I've learned, at least from my son, and he's still young, so I don't pretend to be like an expert here, but there's nothing that influences my son more than what he sees I'm eating. And so he's actually been a real great like integrity monitor, where it's really funny with like if I I was getting so crafty in the beginning, making these like little like broccoli tots, like all the like recipes or whatever, how to like put all these veggies in. And then I would laugh because I would be just eating a salad and he's like, I don't feed him salad because I feel like he's probably maybe old enough now, but for a while it was like, they're too young for that kind of a thing. And he would be like, all he cared about was my salad. All he wants is salad. And I find that now too, like even when I made like a chickpea curry with veggies or whatever the other night for me and my husband. And I gave him, some vegetables and like this like mung bean pot, like a thing that I thought he would like more. And he's just like, no, I want what you guys are having, right?
Oh,
And so I think that's been a good indicator for me of like, I really want to set the tone for him, but also, um, it is, I think, as a mom, just like you're so busy, you're running around that I have to be more mindful of having those quick fixes, right? Of
yeah,
having those things. And for me, it's even like the quick fixes, I try to make it so that like it's not all the time, but most of the time, that whatever snacks I'm bringing for him could also be applicable for me.
yeah,
And so I'm just gonna bring a bunch, and it's like, okay, I try to not feed him things that I would not eat, and like, vice versa, so that we're both eating healthy things. Um, and yeah, and you have to be really conscious of it. It's hard because it really is easy. I've never, I used to consciously intermittent fast a lot before I got pregnant. And now I joke, I'm like, I like accidentally intermittent fast because I'm
hmm
just like, okay, I need to be changed, I need to be occupied, I need to be dressed, you need to like make his breakfast. And then by the time I take a breath, I'm like, okay, it's lunchtime.
Exactly. Yeah, I totally get that. Yeah, and it's great that you're modeling that behavior naturally for your son because our kids, are watching us 24/7. They don't listen to what we say, they watch what we do.
Oh, they do. They really do. And, I'm not gonna pretend that like, of course you know, I'll never forget we went to a kid's birthday party and they had pizza and I hadn't given him pizza yet. I mean, he's a baby, he doesn't need pizza. And so I brought for him like his little green smoothies and like apple slices and all this stuff. And some of the other kids were eating pizza and he's eating it and he like runs off. And I watch him, he like grabs a slice of pizza and then like hides in the corner. And I remember I was like, I told my husband about it and I was like, okay, so the next week I was like, we made at home like a cauliflower crusted pizza and put like veggies and stuff on it. And I'm like, because I don't want him to think that he can't have like a food, but I want to just show him like we can have this and this could be healthier.
Sure.
And obviously he's gonna go to parties and eat pizza, like kids are gonna do what kids do. But because I do think as much as the diet I grew up with was very, not what one would consider healthy, I don't think. Um, the one of the gifts I think it gave me was that I never had like that kind of like like that like forbidden fruit thing around any sort of food, right? Because
Uh-huh.
no food was forbidden, so like none of it was super special to me.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. And does that include sugar?
Growing up,
Hmm.
yeah,
Yeah.
growing up I was allowed to have sugar. Um, my parents like drink soda and my mom would actually put sugar in my cereal, which is crazy. now that I think about it. But there's a different time, I guess, a different mentality. But I, on my own, actually, in high school, gave up soda. Didn't want to drink it anymore. And then it wasn't until um, my 20s, my mid 20s, early mid 20s, I guess, was when I finally, did a sugar program. And
Okay.
oh yeah, my son is not allowed to have sugar.
Aha.
Yeah, no sugar. I honestly, for a kid, um, and I get, parents do what they got to do, but I'm someone that struggles with ADHD. And that is something that sugar really lights up.
Okay.
And I saw that in um, in my experience with it. And so when I think, with hyperactivity and all this stuff, I almost just feel like it's not even nice to give him sugar
Mm.
with how his body reacts to it. And it's not about me trying to withhold it. I'm sure at some point when he's older, there might be cake at a party. And if he wants to have that cake, I'm going to let him have it because I don't, as long, it's like an appropriate, whatever. Um, because I don't want it to become this like, ooh, I have to like collect sugar and like eat it
Yeah.
in secret. Like I want it to be like, this is a special thing we do, like for birthdays, right? Like for special things, we can have some sugar, but we don't need to be eating sugar throughout the whole day.
Yeah.
And there are plenty of natural sugars with fruits and things like that that he absolutely can have and have as a treat. um, but yeah, I found that with myself that I got to a point where I became really cognizant of how sugar affected me because I was looking into um, when I was in college, I noticed that I is when I kind of became more aware of what I was putting in my body, and I had to do a whole cleanse, I would say. It's like a cleanse that you would do for food allergies because
Okay.
this was before we had all of the blood testing. I mean, now we have so much stuff. This was, we're experimenting.
Right. Right.
So you would take out all these things that could have different reactions to you, and then you would slowly add them in one at a time to kind of notice what was happening. Um, and so when I was doing that was when I really started noticing how different things affected me and my relationships with different types of foods.
Mm.
And sugar was one of the ones that I really noticed that relationship was the most unhealthy of all of the foods. I
Okay.
mean, it didn't like, I mean, I have some foods that I'm like very allergic to or like have severe reactions to. But what I noticed with sugar that was different than any of the other foods was that sugar is the only one that I struggled with the on-off switch with. And so it led to me, if I was going to have, you know, um, the muffin at the dining hall, college, or like grabbing a muffin and a coffee on your way to class, then I would be so much more likely then to make another sugary choice for
Mm.
lunch and then end up like eating more, cookies and brownie, and it
Yes.
just became this cycle where I noticed if just like at game one, I made that different choice, the whole day kind of went differently.
Totally. Totally.
Um, so that's kind of when I noticed that I had a problem with sugar and that was something that I couldn't play with in that way.
Uh-huh. I get it. Yeah. Yeah, it was a bit like my experience as well, a kind of elimination diet. And then for me, I realized that actually I don't want to bring any of the sugar back in because I feel so much better. It's just, what's the
Yeah,
point?
yeah. And that's how I felt too. I mean, for so many of the things that I eliminated, I was like, I don't want to add. Like, why
Right.
would I add this back in? I feel amazing.
Yeah.
And for me also with sugar, it was the as someone just like that loves working and writing and is I'm very aware of my like intellectual sharpness
Hmm.
on the day to day, right? And that's something that I really notice is affected by food.
Huh.
And so that was something that was a high priority for me because one of the things that I noticed that I didn't intend on noticing when I went on my, first sugar detox or whatnot, where I was being a little bit more intense about it, was I was like, oh my God, I did not realize that I could be this focused, that I could have this like mental sharpness. Um, and for me, that's like, that's addicting,
Yeah.
right? To be
Okay.
like, oh, I don't want to give this up. Like, I don't want to feel foggy. I want to be able to function. And for someone that's like, battled with ADHD, to be able to do something that like, to not have medicine and to be able to do something that moves the lever so dramatically is like wild
It is.
to
It is
me.
wild. Yeah, oh, totally. And if you had one piece of advice to give listeners about being more mindful when they're eating or around food, what would that advice be?
I think I'm trying to think, there's so many things.
Mhm.
I think the first thing is I would do a food mood journal.
Hmm.
This is a way to kind of achieve what me and you did the hard way
Yes.
with our elimination diet. Um, is it's a softer, gentler approach to someone that just wants to begin this journey. But essentially, what it is, I do it with all my clients, is for 2, 3 weeks, just log every single thing that you're putting in your mouth. So I don't care if it's like 3 M&Ms you stole out of your kid's backpack or whatever, or like Sally at the office brought in like, muffins, you had a bite, like just write it. And I'm always like, nobody's judging you for what this is. You're the only person that needs to look at this.
Hmm.
But write everything that you're eating and then write, 30 minutes or an hour later, just how you're feeling. Notice, like, doesn't have to be anything crazy. I mean, sometimes you might get a stomach ache or you might notice something a little bit more dramatic, but most of the time it's just, how's my energy? How's my focus? How do I feel in my body? Am I bloated or not bloated or whatever? And then write it all down. And at the end of each week, just kind of look through it and notice what patterns you have.
Hmm.
Notice, wow, okay, well, I noticed that, when, whatever, Amy at work brought in the muffins for breakfast. Wow, ended up also going to the bakery and then getting a pastry after lunch. And then I noticed I really wanted ice cream at dinner. And wow, but the next day when I had, my avocado on Ezekiel bread or whatever before I left the house, I was fine. And then I had like my usual salad with some protein for lunch. And then I didn't need, and it's things like this where whether it's sugar, which I know is like more of the focus, or it's something like, I feel like sugar can go hand in hand with like gluten in bread,
Yeah.
and there's like different ranges on how sensitive people are, right, to
Mhm.
different things. So I know some people that are like very hardcore about no sugar, don't even do certain fruits. Um, I'm very lucky that like for me, pineapple, especially when it's in season, it does not have the same effect on me as having a cookie
Yeah.
in the morning does, right?
Yeah.
Um, and also I'm like, okay, if I finish the whole thing of pineapple, like I'm okay with that personally.
Yeah.
I,
Yeah. Sure.
there's so many good nutrients I got in there too, whereas like I don't need to finish like the whole thing in the cookies.
Totally.
Um, but you start noticing, and that's why I think you start noticing these patterns, or you notice, wow, when I had that, I mean, the egg sandwich for breakfast, I actually got a stomach ache. I don't know, right? It's like our bodies are so unique, and especially as women, in every season of our life, in different parts of our cycle, different parts of our menstrual, perimenopause, menopause, our bodies are always changing. And so what worked for you even a year ago, what worked for you even a month ago, could not be working for you right now. But if you come at it from this place of just curiosity and self-love, I think that's why when people ask me, they're like, oh, you eat so healthy or you don't eat certain things or whatnot. doesn't that feel hard, or isn't that like feel like restrictive or whatnot? Uh, to me, it's actually, if you do it this way, it's not at all.
Mm.
Because like kind of like you were saying, it's like I just felt so good. Why
Yeah,
would I want to stop feeling good? And that's how I feel. If you yourself start putting like 1 + 1 = 2 together, it's different than me or you telling a client you can't eat pancakes anymore or whatever, right?
yeah,
But
totally.
when they're like, oh man, I had pancakes that day and I was a zombie the rest of the day. Then they're like, okay, I'm going to choose or pick and choose carefully when I eat those pancakes because I now know 1 + 1 = 2 for me, right? And
Yeah.
then you learn your body and how your body is going to react to it.
Exactly. It's about, I don't want to feel like a zombie, or in my case, when I eat flour, like with joint pain for a week. I don't want that. It's not that I don't want the food. Believe me, I want the food, but I don't want the suffering.
Yeah, it's not worth it to you. And so then you've made that decision from a really empowered place. You're at peace with it.
Yeah,
And I think that's also where it comes, you need less and less willpower because it's not about you saying, I can't have that or I can't
exactly.
do that because someone else told me it's bad for me. It actually came from the inside out. And you were like, I've experienced what happens when I eat that. And the, momentary joy I might get from that piece of cake or whatnot is actually not worth how I feel after it. It's not worth my joint pain. It's not worth my lack of focus or my rash that I get or whatever.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you, Cassandra. It's amazing to hear you talk like this. We are on the same page, and I think the listeners of this episode will be inspired by you. Thank you.
I love this. Thanks so much. It was lovely chatting with you.
What a great conversation with Cassandra. And even if you had never heard the concept of mindful eating before, I think she explains it really clearly. And the bottom line is that when you start noticing how food makes you feel, and especially how sugary food makes you feel, then you can start asking yourself other more important questions, such as, how do I want to feel? And if the decision comes from you that you want to feel good, then the notion of willpower doesn't even get a look in, because once your goal is clear, you can decide for yourself what you need to do to get to your goal of feeling good, instead of following a bunch of rules that someone else gave you. And this approach of empowering you to know what you want and how to make your own decisions and choices with relation to food is exactly what you will develop in my 12-week program, The Freedom from Cravings Formula. Because I created this program specifically for women over 50 to help you go deeper into your relationship with food, especially sugar, and also into your relationship with yourself. And so that you can get guidance and support to help you stop emotional eating, break free from sugar cravings, slim down, and feel more in control around food, and more empowered to know about your own body and your own health. In the program, you'll get step-by-step guidance and customized support through the 5-step formula that I've developed so that you can live your life with more energy and fit into your favorite clothes effortlessly, feel confident in your food choices, and ditch the shame and embarrassment that you feel every time your emotions make you slip or fall off the wagon, and so that you never have to feel like you're on some kind of restrictive diet. By the time you're 50 and over, you've spent decades looking after everybody else. And now it's your turn to take care of yourself. So let's chat about your specific needs and why you want to break free from cravings. To learn more about the Freedom from Cravings Formula program, go to sugarcravingsfree.com. And also, you'll find the link to book a free video chat with me with this episode in the show notes. That's it for this week. Keep in touch and see you soon for another episode.